The chains were heavy, but not as heavy as the Emperor's gaze. I knelt in the throne room, wrists bound in iron that had held 100 rebels before me, and I refused to lower my eyes. Let him see my defiance. Let him know that Felix Moreau would never bow, not even with a sword at his throat. Emperor Daemon Noir sat motionless on his obsidian throne, beautiful and terrible as a winter storm. His dark hair fell across pale features that could have been carved from marble, and those silver eyes, gods, those eyes studied me like I was a puzzle he intended to solve before breaking me apart. Felix Moreau, his voice echoed through the cavernous hall, cold and precise. Leader of the failed rebellion, murderer of imperial soldiers, traitor to the crown, tyrant, I spat back. Butcher of innocence, oppressor of the people. The guards tensed, hands on their weapons. But Daemon raised one pale hand, and they froze. Something flickered in his expression, amusement, admiration. It vanished before I could name it. You will remain by my side indefinitely, he pronounced, each word falling like a death sentence. As my personal prisoner, you will not be executed. You will not be tortured. You will simply exist in my presence until I decide otherwise. I opened my mouth to curse him, to tell him I'd rather die than. He is magnificent even in chains. I should have found another way, but if I let him go, he'll get himself killed fighting me. This is the only way to keep him safe, even if he hates me forever. The voice crashed into my mind like a wave drowning out my own thoughts. It was his voice, the Emperor's voice, but he hadn't spoken. His lips remained pressed in that thin, cruel line. Yet I heard him as clearly as if he'd whispered directly into my ear. I gasped, my eyes flying to the strange crystalline artifact mounted on the wall behind his throne. It pulsed with a faint blue light that seemed to synchronize with my racing heartbeat. What the hell had just happened? Do you have something to say, rebel? Daemon's actual voice cut through my confusion, sharp as a blade. I stared at him, my mind reeling. Had I imagined it? The Emperor's expression remained impassive, bored even, as he waited for my response. I'd rather die than be your pet, I managed, my voice rougher than intended. Please don't say that. Please. You have no idea how many nights I've stayed awake terrified that you'd throw your life away for this doomed cause. There it was again, his voice laced with something raw and desperate that his face would never betray. The crystal pulsed brighter, and suddenly I understood. Somehow, impossibly, I was hearing his thoughts. The Emperor, who looked at me with such cool disdain, was thinking about sleepless nights, worrying about me. Take him to the Eastern Tower, Daemon ordered, already turning his attention to a stack of documents, as if I were nothing more than a clerical matter to be filed away. The chamber adjacent to my own quarters. He is not to be harmed. Those who disobey will face execution. I need him close. Need to know he is safe. This is madness, but I can't. I won't lose him. The chamber they brought me to was more luxurious than any place I'd ever lived. Silk sheets, carved furniture, a view of the palace gardens that would have been breathtaking if I weren't a prisoner. I immediately began examining the windows for escape routes, testing the strength of the door, searching for weaknesses. I was still plotting when the Emperor entered without knocking. I spun to face him, instinctively, backing toward the window, even though we were 4 stories up. He'd changed from his formal robes into simpler dark clothing, though somehow he seemed no less intimidating. If anything, without the trappings of office, there was something more predatory about him. The guard said, "You refuse dinner," he said, setting down a tray himself. Bread, cheese, fruit, wine. Simple fare, but my stomach betrayed me with a growl. I'm not hungry, I lied. He is too thin. Has he been eating at all during the campaign? Stubborn fool, trying to starve himself to prove a point. Eat, Damon commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. I didn't preserve your life only to have you waste away from pride. Why? The question burst from me before I could stop it. Why? Keep me alive? Why not just execute me and be done with it? He went very still, and for a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he moved to the window, staring out at the city lights below. Because the Empire needs stability, he said coldly. Martyring you would only inspire more rebellions. This way, when your followers see you've been domesticated, they'll lose hope. Because I can't bear the thought of a world without you in it. Because I've been half mad since the day I saw you speak in that square, calling my people to revolution with fire in your eyes. Because you're the only thing in this cursed empire I actually want, and I can't have you. So I'll settle for keeping you close, even if you hate me. The disconnect between his words and his thoughts made my head spin. I gripped the windowsill, trying to make sense of it. You're lying, I said slowly, watching his reflection in the glass. That is not why. He turned sharply, those silver eyes narrowing. Careful, rebel. I may have spared your life, but my patience has limits. How does he know? Can he see it on my face? I need to be more careful. Can't let him realize how much power he has over me. I'm not afraid of you, I said, which was perhaps the biggest lie I'd ever told. I was terrified, but not for the reasons he thought. Something flickered in his expression. Hurt, quickly smothered. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, and suddenly he was close enough that I could smell sandalwood and steel. You should be, he said softly, dangerously. I am the man who burned entire villages for defying me. I am the emperor who ordered the execution of anyone caught even speaking of rebellion. I have killed thousands. Felix Moreau. I will kill thousands more if it serves my purposes. But never you. I could never hurt you. Gods help me. I think I'd burn the whole world before I'd let anyone harm a single hair on your head. My breath caught. He was so close, I could see flecks of darker gray in his silver eyes. Could count his eyelashes if I wanted to. This close, he didn't look like a tyrant. He looked tired, lonely, almost vulnerable. Then why, I whispered, does it sound like you're trying to convince yourself? His jaw clenched, and for a heartbeat, I thought he might actually answer, honestly. Instead, he stepped back, his mask of imperial indifference sliding back into place. Eat, sleep. Tomorrow, you'll begin learning your place in this palace. He strode toward the door, then paused. And Felix, don't try to escape. I have guards posted at every exit, and I sleep lightly. You wouldn't make it past the second corridor. Please don't try. Please. I don't want to have to chase you down. Don't want to see that look in your eyes when you realize you can't leave. Just stay. Let me pretend, even for a little while, that you're here because you want to be. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and I was alone with my racing thoughts and a truth I wasn't ready to face. The tyrant I dedicated my life to destroying was obsessed with me, and somehow, impossibly, I'd been given the power to hear every tortured thought behind that cold, perfect mask. I looked at the food he'd brought, then at the locked door. My hands were shaking. What the hell was I supposed to do with this? Sleep was impossible. I spent the night pacing, testing the windows again, trying to formulate a plan, but every strategy crumbled under the weight of what I'd learned. How could I escape when I now knew the Emperor's greatest weakness? How could I use this information for the rebellion when his thoughts revealed a man, nothing like the monster I'd built him up to be? At dawn, a servant arrived with clothing, fine garments in deep blue and silver. I wanted to refuse them, to stay in my rebel's rags as a statement, but they'd been torn and bloody during my capture. Practical won out over pride. I was barely dressed when Damon appeared in my doorway again. Did the man ever knock? Come, he said simply. You'll breakfast with me. I want to see him in my colors, want to pretend, just for a morning, that he chose to be here. I followed him through winding corridors, to a private dining room I suspected he rarely used. The table was set for two, intimate and strange. The Emperor took his seat and gestured for me to take the one across from him. "I'm not your guest," I said, but I sat anyway. I was starving, and the spread before us was magnificent. "No," he agreed, pouring tea with his own hands. "You're my prisoner, but even prisoners must eat." We sat in tense silence for several minutes, the only sound the clink of silverware against porcelain. I watched him over the rim of my cup, this man I'd spent 3 years trying to kill, and tried to reconcile the tyrant with the thoughts I'd heard. "Why did you really start the crackdowns?" I asked finally. "The ones in the eastern provinces, the ones that pushed people to rebellion." His hand paused halfway to his mouth. "To maintain order, to draw you out. I heard you'd been organizing in secret, helping villages resist. I thought if I applied enough pressure, you'd have to reveal yourself. I thought I could capture you before you got yourself killed. I never meant for so many to die, I just needed to find you." "You're lying again," I said quietly. His eyes snapped to mine, sharp and dangerous. "You seem remarkably confident in your ability to read me." "Maybe I am." It was reckless, but I needed to understand. "Maybe you're not as good at hiding as you think." "Impossible. I've spent my entire life perfecting this mask. How can he see through it unless I want him to? Unless some part of me is desperate for him to know, to understand." "Enough," he said sharply, setting down his cup with enough force that tea sloshed over the rim. "You may be my prisoner, rather than my corpse, but that doesn't give you leave to speak to me so familiarly." "Then kill me," I challenged. "If my words offend you so greatly, execute me. Isn't that what tyrants do?" "Never. I'd sooner cut out my own heart." He stood abruptly, and for a moment, I thought I'd pushed too far. But he just stood there, hands braced on the table, breathing hard like he'd run a great distance. "Do you know," he said quietly, "how many assassination attempts I've survived? 37. I sleep with a blade under my pillow and poison testers for every meal. I trust no one in this palace, not my advisors, not my guards, not even my own blood relatives. Everyone wants something from me: power, wealth, favor, or my death." He looked up at me, and the rawness in his expression made my chest tight. "Everyone except you. You want nothing from me except for me to stop existing. It is almost refreshing. You're the only honest thing in my life. The only person who doesn't pretend to love me while plotting my downfall. You hate me openly, and somehow that makes you the only one I can trust." I didn't know what to say to that, didn't know how to respond to this glimpse behind the crown. "I don't want you dead," I heard myself say, and immediately wondered if it was still true. "I want you to be better, to rule justly, to give people hope instead of fear." Something cracked in his carefully maintained composure. He laughed, but it was a broken sound. "Hope," he repeated. "Do you know what happened to the last emperor who ruled with hope instead of fear? He was betrayed by his own council and torn apart by a mob. I was 9 years old when I watched them drag his body through the streets. They killed my father because he was weak, because he trusted, because he tried to be kind. I swore I'd never make his mistakes. I swore I'd be strong enough, ruthless enough, that no one would dare." "So you became the monster to avoid being the victim," I finished, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He froze, staring at me like I'd spoken in tongues. "What?" I stood slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. "You're not cruel because you enjoy it. You're cruel because you're afraid, because you think it is the only way to survive. Stop. Stop seeing me. Stop understanding. I can't. If you look at me like that, I'll—" "You don't know anything about me," he said. but his voice shook slightly. Don't I? I took another step closer. Reckless, stupid, but I needed to know. I think you're the loneliest person in this entire palace. I think you haven't had a genuine conversation with another human being in years. I think you saw me speak at that rally, and for just a moment, you wanted to believe that your empire could be the thing I was describing instead of what it is. His breath hitched. How? And I think, I continued, barely a whisper now, that you brought me here not to break me, but because I'm the only person in your life who refuses to break, the only one who'll tell you the truth, even if it gets me killed. Please, please stop. I can't want this, can't want you. It is the one weakness I can't afford, and if anyone discovers it, I could use this, I said, something hardening in my chest, even as I said it. Your interest in me. I could manipulate you, convince you to free my people, to reform your laws. I could destroy you from the inside. He went very still, and I braced myself for rage. Instead, he smiled, a real smile, sad and knowing. I know, he said simply. Why do you think I've kept you close? If you're going to be my downfall, I'd rather see it coming. And if you're going to destroy me, let it be you. Let it be your hands, your voice, your eyes watching as I burn. At least then, I'll have this, the knowledge that I mattered enough for you to care about my destruction. The honesty of it, the sheer self-destructive devotion in his thoughts, stole my breath. You're insane, I whispered. Yes, he agreed, I am. But then, only a madman would capture the leader of a rebellion and keep him in his own chambers, so perhaps that is fitting. We stood there, barely a foot apart, and I could feel the heat radiating from his body. This close, I could see the faint shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw. He looked like a man at war with himself. What do you want from me? I asked, and I wasn't sure if I was asking him or myself. Everything, nothing. I want you safe. Want you happy, want you to look at me without hatred, want to give you the world and watch you burn it down, if that is what makes you smile. Want to be worthy of you, even though I know I never will be. I want, he said carefully, for you to eat breakfast, and then I want you to tell me about your plans for agricultural reform in the southern provinces. I blinked. What? Your manifesto. The one you distributed before the rebellion. You had ideas about crop rotation and irrigation systems. I want to hear them, so you can use them to strengthen your tyranny, so I can implement them, so I can give you something you want, so I can see that light in your eyes when you talk about making things better. Perhaps, he said neutrally, or perhaps I'm simply curious about the mind of the man who nearly toppled my empire. I studied him for a long moment, weighing truth against lies, spoken words against hidden thoughts, against every instinct that screamed this was a trap. I found myself sitting back down. Fine, I said, but I want something in exchange. His eyebrows rose. You're negotiating. You're my prisoner. You want me to share my ideas. Then I want information. Real information about the state of the empire. Not propaganda, not carefully curated reports. Truth. Dangerous. If he knows how unstable things really are, he could. But gods, to have someone to talk to honestly. To not have to pretend everything is under control. To share this burden, even for a moment. Acceptable, he said, after a pause. But this conversation stays between us. If you use what I tell you to incite another rebellion, I'll have no choice but to respond harshly. Understood. And so we talked. For hours, we talked about crop yields and tax structures, about supply lines and provincial governors. I told him about the villages I'd visited, the people starving while nobles hoarded grain. He told me about corrupt officials he couldn't remove without triggering a power struggle, about how the empire teetered on the edge of civil war. The northern lords are 2 steps from open rebellion, he admitted, pouring more tea. They think I'm weak because I haven't produced an heir. They're gathering support to install my cousin on the throne. I don't want an heir, don't want to force some poor woman into a loveless marriage just to produce children I'll never care about. How can I when the only person I want is... So take a wife, I said, trying to ignore the strange twist in my gut at the thought. Secure your succession. I don't want. He stopped himself, jaw clenching. It is not that simple. I don't want anyone but you. Can't imagine touching anyone else, kissing anyone else, waking up next to anyone else. It is madness. It is impossible. But there it is. The silence stretched between us, loaded with things neither of us could say. The agricultural reforms, I said finally, desperately changing the subject. If you actually implement them, you'll face resistance from the landowners. They profit from the current system. Let them resist, he said coldly, and there was the emperor again. I've crushed bigger obstacles. For you. I'd crush them for you. I'd remake this entire empire if it meant you'd look at me with something other than hatred. By the time we finished, the sun had moved across the sky. Hours had passed in what felt like minutes, and I'd somehow forgotten I was supposed to hate this man. Tomorrow, Damon said as he stood to leave, I want to hear your thoughts on the trade agreements with the Western kingdoms. I suspect they're cheating us. Is this what my imprisonment looks like? I asked, unable to keep the bitter edge from my voice. Forced consultation on policy? He paused at the door, his back to me. Would you prefer a dungeon? I can arrange that. Please say no. Please let this be enough. Let me have these moments with you, even if it is all I ever get. No, I admitted quietly. This is fine. When he left, I sat alone in the dining room and tried to understand what was happening to me. I was supposed to be plotting escape, finding weaknesses to exploit. Instead, I'd spent the morning discussing irrigation systems and finding myself grudgingly impressed by his grasp of economic theory. The crystal's power was a gift, I told myself. Knowledge was power, and hearing his thoughts gave me unprecedented access to the tyrant's mind. I could use this. I would use this. I just had to ignore the growing sense that understanding Damor might be more dangerous than hating him. Days blurred into weeks. Every morning, Damon would arrive at my chamber, and we'd spend hours talking, sometimes about policy, sometimes about philosophy. He tested my ideas, challenged my assumptions, and, God's help me, I found myself looking forward to our debates. At night, alone, in my luxurious prison, I'd hear the guards change shifts outside my door. I'd identified 3 different escape routes, bribed 2 servants, and had a contact in the city ready to hide me. I should have escaped a dozen times over, but I didn't, because during the day, I'd sit across from the Emperor and hear thoughts like, he smiled today, just for a moment when he thought I wasn't looking. I'd give up half my empire to see that smile directed at me. Or, if I implement his suggestion about the granaries, it'll cost the treasury millions. But if it means fewer people starve, if it means he sees I'm trying, worth it. All of it is worth it. I was being seduced, I realized, with growing horror. Not with touches or kisses, but with policy reforms and glimpsed vulnerabilities. With the sight of a tyrant slowly, painfully trying to be better because someone finally demanded it of him. You're doing this on purpose, I accused him one afternoon when he announced he was removing 3 corrupt governors. I'd mentioned in passing, you're trying to, what, win me over? Yes, gods, yes, I'd do anything. Everything, just tell me what you want. I'm governing my empire, he said coolly. If your suggestions have merit, I'd be a fool to ignore them. and the increased grain subsidies for the eastern provinces, the new schools in the southern villages, the reduction in military conscription, all practical measures to increase stability and productivity. All for you, every single one. Please notice. Please see that I'm trying. I stood abruptly, suddenly furious. Stop it, he blinked. Stop what? This. Whatever game you're playing, you don't get to be the villain for years, and then suddenly start acting like a benevolent ruler just because. I cut myself off before I said too much. Because why? He stood as well, moving around the table toward me. Finish the sentence, Felix. Because of you. It has always been you. Everything I've done since I saw you in that square has been about you. Because you think it'll make me compliant, I said. But even I could hear how weak it sounded. Because you want me to stop fighting. I want, he said, and his voice dropped low and dangerous, for you to be happy, even if it is not with me. Even if you take these reforms and use them to build your new world, and leave me behind in the ashes of the old one. I just want to see you smile again. Want to know that somewhere in this world you exist, and you're safe, and you're fulfilled, even if I never get to be part of that life. I stumbled back, my shoulders hitting the wall. You're lying, am I? He kept coming, closing the distance until we were nearly touching. Tell me then, if I'm lying, why have I implemented every reform you've suggested? Why am I dismantling the very structures of fear that kept me in power? Why am I making myself vulnerable to every enemy I've ever made? For you, all for you, only for you. Because you're insane, I whispered, but my voice shook. Yes, he agreed, and his hand came up to cup my jaw with devastating gentleness. But I'm honestly insane. There is a certain freedom in that. I should have pulled away, should have struck him, cursed him, reminded him that I was his prisoner, and this was wrong on every level. Instead, I heard myself ask, "What do you want from me?" His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, and his thoughts were so loud I could barely hear my own. Everything, your heart, your touch, your trust. Want to wake up next to you, want to hear you laugh freely. Want you to look at me like I'm not a monster. Want to deserve you, even though I know I never will. Want to be yours, completely, even if you only ever see me as your enemy. I want, he said aloud, voice rough, for you to tell me to stop, to push me away, to remind me that this is impossible. It is impossible, I said, but I didn't move. I know. His forehead dropped against mine, and we stood there, breathing the same air, balanced on the edge of something that would destroy us both. But I stopped caring about possible the day I realized I'd rather have you hate me and be alive than love me and be dead. I don't hate you, I confessed, the words torn from somewhere deep. I should. I want to, but I can't seem to manage it anymore. Thank God. Thank God. I thought I was going mad, feeling this alone. Felix, he breathed my name like a prayer. If you have any mercy in you, tell me to leave. Tell me this is wrong. Tell me to go before I do something we'll both regret. I could have, should have. One word, and he'd walk away. His thoughts told me that much. He'd never force this, never take what wasn't freely given. But I'd spent weeks listening to the desperate devotion in his mind, weeks watching him slowly dismantle his own empire, because I'd asked him to, weeks seeing the lonely, terrified boy beneath the tyrant's crown. And I'd spent just as long lying to myself about what it meant. Stay, I whispered, and his eyes closed, like I'd granted him salvation. When he kissed me, it was with the tenderness of something precious and fragile. His hands cradled my face like I might shatter, and his thoughts were a symphony of wonder and disbelief. He is letting me. He is kissing me back. This is real. This is God's. He tastes like hope. Like every good thing I thought I'd never deserve. I kissed him back, and it was surrender and victory. all at once. My hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and he made a sound low in his throat that sent heat coursing through my veins. Felix, he gasped against my mouth. If we do this, if we start this, I won't be able to let you go. You need to understand that. I'm already obsessed with you, already half mad from wanting you. If I have you, even once, I'll never survive losing you. I'll burn the world down before I let anyone take you from me. I'll start a war, kill anyone who tries to separate us. I'll become the monster they all think I am if that is what it takes to keep you. The possessiveness should have terrified me. Instead, it sent a dark thrill down my spine. Then don't let me go, I said, and kissed him again. He lifted me like I weighed nothing, carrying me to his chambers connected to mine by a door I hadn't realized was there. His bed was massive, draped in black silk, and he laid me down on it with reverent care. I've imagined this, he confessed, kneeling over me. So many nights, lying alone in this bed, imagining you here, imagining you wanting me back. Never thought it would actually happen. Thought I'd spend my life wanting someone I could never have. I'm here, I said, reaching up to pull him down to me. I'm here, and I'm choosing this, choosing you. The last of his control shattered. His kiss turned hungry, demanding, and I met him with equal fervor. Clothes became obstacles to be removed with trembling hands and breathless laughs. When skin met skin, he paused to simply look at me. His thoughts a reverent litany, beautiful, perfect. Mine, finally mine. Say it, he demanded, his hands sliding down my body with clear intent. Say, you're mine. I'm yours, I gasped, arching into his touch. Yours. Thank God, thank God. I'll make him so happy. I'll give him everything, the empire, the crown, my life, all of it. He'll never want for anything again. He made love to me like I was something sacred, taking his time despite our mutual desperation. Every touch was worship, every kiss a promise. And through it all, I heard his thoughts. Want to remember this forever. Every sound he makes, every expression, every moment. Want to memorize the way he looks right now, flushed and wanting me. When he finally entered me, we both groaned at the sensation. He moved with careful control, watching my face for any sign of discomfort. Okay? He asked, voice strained. Please be okay. Please, let this be good for him. I need him to want this as much as I do. More than okay, I managed, wrapping my legs around his waist. Damon, please. Hearing his name on my lips seemed to undo him completely. He thrust deeper, harder, and I clung to him as pleasure built between us. His thoughts dissolved into incoherent desire, and my own mind went blissfully blank. When we came, it was together, our voices mingling in the darkness of his chamber. Afterward, he held me close, pressing kisses to my hair, my forehead, my lips. I love you, he whispered, the words raw and honest. I know it is too soon, too much, too complicated, but I love you, Felix Moreau. Have loved you since I first saw you speak truth to power without fear. I'd give it all up for you, the crown, the empire, all of it. Just ask and it is yours. I should have said it back, should have admitted that somewhere along the way, I'd fallen for this broken, lonely tyrant trying so desperately to be better. But the words stuck in my throat, tangled up with guilt and confusion and the crystal's revelations. I know, I said instead, and felt him tense slightly at the evasion. He doesn't love me, not yet, maybe not ever, but he is here, he chose to stay. That has to be enough. Sleep, he murmured, pulling the covers over us both. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. I nestled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. and tried not to think about how much more complicated everything had just become. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, and the warmth of another body pressed against mine. For a confused moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then the previous night came rushing back, and I tensed. Damon's arm tightened around my waist. "Don't," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. "Don't pull away. Not yet. Let me have this morning at least. Let me pretend this is my life, that I wake up like this every day, that he is mine by choice and not circumstance." I wasn't going to pull away, I said, which was mostly true. He made a skeptical sound, but didn't press. Instead, he pressed a kiss to my shoulder, lazy and affectionate in a way that made my chest ache. "I should probably return to my chamber," I said without moving, before the servants. "Let them talk. Let the whole palace know. I'm not ashamed of this, of you. I want everyone to know you're mine. Want to announce it publicly, consequences be damned. Want to see their faces when they realize the rebel I captured as my heart. Demon, you can't. People will use this against you. Your enemies already know I'm obsessed with you," he said pragmatically. "Why else would I keep a captured rebel in my personal quarters? At least this way, I get to enjoy what they already assume is happening." He had a point, though. I hated to admit it. "Besides," he continued, rolling over to prop himself up on one elbow, "I want to discuss something with you. Please don't say no. Please let me give you this." "What?" "I want to make you my advisor, officially. Give you a position at court, access to policy meetings. Let you actually implement the changes you want to see." I stared at him. "You want to give me power, after I tried to overthrow you? I want to give you the tools to fix what is broken. You said, my empire could be better. Prove it. Show me how. I'll give you the authority to make it happen. I trust you more than anyone in this palace. You're the only one whose motives I understand. You want to help people, not gain power. That makes you infinitely more qualified than any of my current advisors." "This is insane," I said, but my mind was already racing with possibilities. What I could do with actual authority, real resources. "You keep saying that, and yet you keep staying." "Fair point. If I accept," I said slowly, "it has to be real, not just a title to keep me pacified. I need actual power to make actual changes." "Done." He said it so quickly, so easily, like giving me power over his empire was nothing. "Take it all. Take everything. I'll hand you the keys to the kingdom if it keeps you here. Your advisors will hate this. They already think you're compromised because of me. My advisors can learn to adjust or find themselves unemployed, and unemployed is the kind option." The threat in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. This was still the emperor who'd killed thousands. I couldn't forget that, no matter how gentle he was with me. "I need to think about it," I said. "Please say yes. Please, let me give you this. It is the only way I know how to show you I'm serious about changing." "Of course." He kissed my forehead. "Take all the time you need, but I'll warn you, I can be very persuasive when I want something." He demonstrated his persuasive abilities by kissing his way down my body, and rational thought became considerably more difficult. That afternoon, I attended my first council meeting as Damon's special advisor. The looks on the counselors' faces when I walked in were priceless, a mix of shock, horror, and barely concealed contempt. "Gentlemen," Damon said pleasantly, taking his seat at the head of the table, "I'm sure you're all aware of Felix Moreau, formerly of the Eastern Rebellion. He'll be joining us from now on in an advisory capacity." "Your Majesty," one of the older counselors sputtered, "surely you cannot be serious. This man is a known traitor." "This man," Damon interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous temperature, "has more insight into the eastern provinces than anyone at this table. Unless you'd like to explain to me why villages are still reporting grain shortages, despite our supposed surplus. Back down. Don't make me destroy you in front of him. I'm trying to be better, but I'll still crush anyone who threatens what is mine. The counselor wisely shut his mouth. The meeting was tense, with several advisors barely containing their hostility. But I'd spent years organizing resistance. I knew how to handle hostile audiences. When they tried to dismiss my suggestions, I backed them up with facts. When they questioned my expertise, I quoted their own reports back at them. By the end, I'd gotten approval for 3 new grain distribution centers and a review of the tax assessors in the southern provinces. Damon watched me with barely concealed pride. Look at him. Magnificent. They can't handle him. He is running circles around them with their own data. I want to kiss him right here in front of all of them. Excellent work today, he said as the counselors filed out, shooting me dark looks, though you've made some enemies. I already had enemies, I pointed out. At least now I can fight them with policy instead of swords. He laughed, genuine and warm. Come to dinner with me tonight. I want to celebrate your first victory. I want to celebrate you, want to show you off, want everyone to see that you're brilliant and you're mine. In the public dining hall, I asked, surprised, why not? Let them see that the rebel and the emperor can share a meal without bloodshed. It'll give them something to gossip about besides assassination plots. It was a calculated risk, and we both knew it. Appearing together publicly would solidify what the palace already suspected. It would paint a target on my back, but it would also make a statement. I wasn't a prisoner anymore. I was something else. Something new. All right, I agreed. Dinner, it is. Thank you for trusting me with this. I won't let you down. That night, walking into the grand dining hall at Damon's side, I felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on us. Nobles and courtiers fell silent, watching as the emperor pulled out a chair for me. For me, the rebel who tried to kill him. Damon seemed utterly unbothered by the attention. He served me himself, poured my wine, engaged me in conversation as if we were the only 2 people in the room. You're enjoying this, I accused quietly. Immensely, he admitted. They're all wondering what I'm planning, what game I'm playing. They can't fathom that I might simply want your company, that I might be happy, that someone might choose to be with me for reasons other than fear or ambition. Let them wonder. Let them see that I have something they can never take away. A commotion at the entrance made everyone turn. A man in military dress strode in, his face flushed with anger. General Marcus, if I remembered correctly, one of Damon's most powerful supporters. Your Majesty, he said loudly, not even bothering with proper protocol. I must speak with you privately about this situation. Threat, he is a threat. Get Felix away from here before. There is nothing you need to say that can't be said here, Damon replied coolly, though I'd remind you to mind your tone. You're making a mockery of this empire, Marcus shouted, and the room went deathly quiet. Keeping your prisoner as a pet, giving him power over policy, dining with him like what? General. Damon's voice was soft, deadly. Choose your next words very carefully. Touch him and I'll have your head on a pike by morning. Insult him and you'll wish I'd just killed you quickly. Like he is your lover, Marcus spat. The entire court is laughing at you behind your back, saying you've been bewitched by a pretty face and revolutionary rhetoric. You're weak, compromised. Damon stood so abruptly, his chair crashed backward. I am many things, General, but weak is not one of them. And you've just committed treason by questioning my judgment in front of my court. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Damon's silver eyes were glacial, his expression carved from ice. This was the emperor who'd conquered kingdoms, who'd crushed rebellions without mercy. Guards, he said quietly, take the general to the dungeons. He can contemplate the consequences of forgetting his place. He insulted you, called you a pet. I should kill him for that. Would kill him if it wouldn't upset you, but I can at least make him suffer. Wait, I said, standing as well. Every eye in the room swiveled to me. Your Majesty, if I may. Damon looked at me, surprise flickering across his features. What is it? The general isn't wrong to be concerned, I said carefully. The Empire is in a precarious position. Your enemies are watching for any sign of weakness. Executing one of your top generals for speaking his mind, however rudely, would look like the very weakness he is accusing you of. You're defending him after what he said about you. What are you suggesting? Damon asked, his voice tight. Let him investigate, I said. Let him review the policy changes we've implemented. If he can prove they've weakened the Empire, I'll step down from my position voluntarily. If he can't, he apologizes publicly and accepts that I'm here on merit, not manipulation. It was a gamble, but I'd seen the numbers. The reforms were working. Grain production was up, tax revenue was increasing, and provincial unrest was at its lowest in years. Demon studied me for a long moment, then turned back to Marcus. You have 2 weeks. Prove the Empire is weaker with Felix Moreau as my advisor, or get on your knees and beg his forgiveness for your insult. Trust you? I trust you, even when it terrifies me. I trust you to know what you're doing. Marcus's face purpled, but he had no choice but to agree. As the guards escorted him out, the dining hall erupted in whispers. That was either very brave or very stupid, Diamond murmured as we sat back down. Probably both, I admitted. But we need the military on our side. Humiliating him would only create more enemies. You're too merciful, and I love you for it. Love that you think about consequences, about people, even when they insult you. You make me want to be better than I am. Someone has to be, I said lightly, since you seem determined to execute anyone who looks at you wrong. He smiled, small and genuine. Only the ones who insult you. Everyone else gets a stern warning. The next 2 weeks were tense. Marcus threw himself into his investigation with the dedication of a man trying to prove a point. Meanwhile, I worked frantically to ensure every reform could withstand scrutiny. Diamond helped, staying up late with me, going over reports and data. We fell into an easy rhythm, working during the day, debating policy over dinner, falling into bed together at night. It felt almost normal, almost like we were just 2 people building something together instead of a tyrant and his former enemy. What are you thinking? Damon asked one night, finding me staring out the window instead of sleeping. Please don't say you regret this. Please don't say you want to leave. I'm thinking, I said slowly, that I didn't expect this to be my life. A month ago, I was prepared to die for the rebellion. Now, I'm in the Emperor's bed helping him govern the Empire I tried to destroy. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. Do you regret it? I leaned back against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. No, that is what scares me. I should regret this, should hate myself for betraying everything I believed in. But I look at what we're accomplishing together, and I can't regret it. Thank God, he is staying. I don't know what I'd do if he left. You haven't betrayed your beliefs, he said quietly. You're just pursuing them through different means. The people are better off now than they were a month ago. Isn't that what you wanted? Yes, but nothing. You wanted change. You're getting it. The method doesn't matter as much as the results. Please let this be enough for you. Please don't wake up one day and realize you could have done more without me holding you back. You're oversimplifying, I said, but there wasn't much heat in it. I'm being pragmatic, and you love me for it. I froze. We hadn't talked about love since that first night. when he'd said it and I'd failed to say it back. "Demon, you do," he said with quiet certainty. "You love me. You just haven't admitted it yet, even to yourself. But I can wait. I'm patient when it comes to things I want. I can hear it in the way you say my name. See it in the way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. Feel it in the way you touch me. You love me. You just need time to accept it." "You're insufferably arrogant," I said, but my voice shook slightly. "I'm right," he corrected, pressing a kiss to my neck. "But I'll let you come to that conclusion on your own time." The day of Marcus's presentation arrived. The entire council gathered, along with representatives from every major noble house. This wasn't just about proving my worth. It was about Damon's judgment, his rule, his strength. Marcus laid out his findings with the precision of a military campaign. Charts, graphs, testimonials. He'd been thorough. I'd give him that. "And so," he concluded, "while it is true that grain production has increased in the eastern provinces, we've also seen a corresponding decrease in military recruitment from those same areas. The people are comfortable, complacent. They're not sending their sons to serve the empire." Clever. He is framing prosperity as weakness, but he is wrong. Happy people are loyal people. "General," I said, standing, "may I respond?" Damon nodded permission, and I walked to the center of the room. "The general is correct that military recruitment is down in the eastern provinces," I said, "but he has failed to mention that desertion rates are also down across the entire military by 40%. Turns out, soldiers are less likely to abandon their posts when their families back home aren't starving." I pulled out my own charts. Furthermore, tax revenue from the eastern provinces has increased by 32%. Not because we raise taxes, but because people who aren't starving can actually pay them. The Treasury has more money now than it did under the old system. I looked directly at Marcus. "You asked if the Empire is weaker with me here. I say it is stronger. Not because of me specifically, but because we're finally treating our people like assets to be invested in rather than resources to be extracted from." Beautiful, he is magnificent. Look at him, commanding the room without fear. That is my Felix. The Empire has always been built on strength, Marcus argued. Fear keeps our enemies at bay. Fear also breeds rebellion, I countered. I should know. I led one. But people who have hope, who see their lives improving, who believe their emperor cares about their well-being. They don't rebel, they defend. I turned to address the entire room. In the past month, we've quelled 3 separate uprisings in the provinces, not through military force, but through the simple act of listening to grievances and addressing them. How many soldiers' lives did that save? How much gold did we not have to spend on military campaigns? The room was silent, nobles exchanging uncertain glances. "General Marcus," Damon said, his voice cutting through the tension, "have you completed your investigation?" Marcus's jaw clenched. "I have, Your Majesty." "And your conclusion?" The words seemed to physically pain him. "The Empire is not weaker. By the metrics that matter, treasury, stability, public order, we are marginally stronger." Marginally. Damon's eyebrow rose. "Significantly," Marcus ground out. "Significantly stronger. Good. Now grovel. Apologize to him for your insult." "Then you owe my advisor an apology," Damon said pleasantly. "Publicly, as we agreed." Marcus looked like he'd swallowed glass, but he turned to me, went down on one knee, and said, "I apologize for my hasty words and unfounded accusations. You have proven your worth to this empire. Apology accepted," I said, offering him a hand up. "And General, I hope we can work together going forward. The empire needs good military minds, as much as it needs policy reform. You're too kind to him. I'd have made him crawl. But this is better. This is how you build alliances instead of enemies. You're teaching me, even when you don't realize it. As the room emptied, nobles, coming up to congratulate me with varying degrees of sincerity, I felt Damon's hand at the small of my back. Well played, he murmured, though I maintain I would have enjoyed watching him grovel more. I know, I said, smiling. But this way he is an ally instead of an enemy plotting revenge. You're making me soft, he complained, but his thoughts betrayed him. You're making me better, making me think before I act, consider consequences beyond immediate satisfaction. I never thought I'd want someone to temper my worst impulses, but with you, I do. Someone has to, I said, then quietly enough that only he could hear. You were right, you know. About what? About me? About how I feel? His breath caught, and his hand tightened on my back. Felix, I love you, I said, the words finally breaking free. I don't know when it happened, or how, but I do. I love you, Damon Noir. Oh God, he said it. He actually said it. This is real. He pulled me into a fierce kiss right there in the council chamber, not caring who saw. When we broke apart, his eyes were bright with something that looked suspiciously like tears. Say it again, he demanded. I love you again. I love you, you impossible, tyrannical, brilliant man. Mine, he is mine. He loves me. He is choosing me. I love you too, he said, his forehead pressed against mine. And I swear to you, Felix Moreau, I will spend the rest of my life being worthy of that love. The months that followed were far from easy. We faced resistance from conservative nobles, assassination, attempts from Damon's enemies, and constant scrutiny from those who still saw me as a threat. But we also accomplished real change. Schools opened in impoverished areas. Infrastructure projects employed thousands. Fair trade agreements replaced exploitative ones. Damon remained ruthless when necessary. This was still the man who'd built an empire on fear, but he was learning to wield mercy as effectively as punishment. You're changing me, he said one night, wrapped around me in the darkness. Good, I replied. You needed changing. Every day with you makes me want to be better, want to build something worthy of your faith in me. I want to make you my consort, he said suddenly. Officially, let the world know that you're mine, and I'm yours. I tensed. Damon, that is, we can't. The political implications. I don't care about the political implications. I care about you, about us, about making sure that if anything happens to me, you're protected, that you have the authority to continue this work. I want everyone to know you're the most important person in my life. Want to bind you to me in every way possible. Want to wake up every day for the rest of my life knowing you're mine. There is already talk about your obsession with me, I pointed out. Making me consort will only. Let them talk. They can call me obsessed, call me weak, call me whatever they want. I've been called worse, but I will not hide what you mean to me, not anymore. I rolled over to face him, studying the determination in his silver eyes. You really mean this? I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Say yes. Please say yes. Let me give you everything. All right, I said, and watched joy bloom across his face. But on one condition. Anything. We do this right. Not as a political maneuver, but as a partnership. Equal voices in governing the empire. I won't be a decorative consort. I want real power to continue making changes. Done, he said immediately. I'd have it no other way. You've always been my equal, Felix. Time we made it official. The announcement of our union sent shockwaves through the empire. Some celebrated it as a new era of progressive rule. Others saw it as final proof of the emperor's madness. But as I stood beside Damon during the ceremony, his hand clasped in mine, I realized I didn't care what they thought. We were building something new together, an empire that could be both strong and just feared and loved. I used to dream of destroying you, I murmured as we exchanged vows, and now I dream of building something better with you. He smiled, genuine and warm. Then let's build it together. And we did. In the years that followed, the empire transformed. It wasn't perfect. Progress never is. There were setbacks and struggles, enemies who tried to exploit any perceived weakness. But with each challenge, we adapted. With each crisis, we grew stronger. And through it all, I could hear Damon's thoughts, his fears, his hopes, his unwavering devotion. You're my weakness, he'd think on hard days. My greatest vulnerability. Anyone who wanted to hurt me would only need to threaten you. And then, but you're also my strength. The reason I fight to be better. The proof that even someone like me can be loved. 10 years after my capture, I stood in the throne room where I'd first heard Damon's thoughts. The crystal that had granted me that power had long since crumbled to dust, its magic exhausted. But I didn't need it anymore. I knew Damon's heart as well as I knew my own. Felix, he called from across the room, and I turned to see him reviewing plans for new hospitals in the northern provinces. Come look at this. I think we can fit 2 more than we originally planned. I crossed to him, and he pulled me into his arms without looking up from the documents. A casual intimacy we'd earned through years of trust and love. We're getting old, I said, spotting silver in his dark hair. Speak for yourself, he replied, but he was smiling. I'm aging like fine wine. You're aging like milk, I corrected, and he laughed. I love you, I thought, though he couldn't hear. I love you, and I'm so grateful I failed that rebellion, because this us together, changing the world, is better than anything I could have built alone. What are you thinking? He asked, finally looking up. That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, I said honestly. He kissed me, sweet and familiar. Good, because I'm never letting you go. Possessive tyrant, I teased. Your possessive tyrant, he corrected. Mine, I agreed. And as we returned to planning hospitals and schools and all the ways we could make our empire better, I marveled at the strange path that had brought us here. From enemy to prisoner to partner to love, I'd set out to destroy a tyrant and ended up saving him instead. And in saving him, I'd found myself.